Listeners, have you been trying to fit your life story into the hero's journey only to find it's not working? What if the problem isn't that it doesn't fit the mold, but that you were never meant to be the hero? Rather, you were meant to be the queen. In this 100th episode of the Writing and Resilience podcast, I'm joined by Stacey Simmons, a licensed marriage and family therapist, certified psychedelic therapist, and author of The Queen's Path. Together, we explore sovereignty, archetypes, and why so many women's stories end before they claim their full power. We'll talk about the MISOR, the MIPE, curses, and marks, and how you can use this archetypal model to create an honest memoir and a more sovereign life. Plus, you won't want to miss what Stacey has to say about the real dangers of the Queen's Path and why you should take it anyway. Let's dive in. Welcome to Writing and Resilience, the podcast for writers who want to write and live the story that sets them free. I'm your host, Lisa Cooper Ellison, a writer, transformational and trauma-informed coach, story alchemist, and fellow traveler on the winding road of healing and creativity. Each week, I'll share tools, practices, and conversations that will help you let go of what no longer serves you as you create stories that change lives, especially your own. Together, we'll explore how to trust your creative voice, support your mental health and resilience, work with your nervous system and unique design, and stay connected to your deepest calling as a writer, even when life gets messy. It's time, my friends, to write and live the story that sets you free. I'm honored to walk that journey alongside you, one story and one episode at a time. Well, hello, Stacey. Welcome to not just the Writing Your Resilience podcast, but the 100th episode of the Writing Your Resilience podcast. I am so excited to have you on because let me just say to you and all my listeners, I am a huge, huge fan of The Queen's Path. This is an amazing book. Writers, you all need a copy. And by the end of this episode, you're going to know why. So, welcome again.
Oh, Lisa, I'm so excited to be here and thank you for such a beautiful endorsement. It's been a journey and I'm so excited to share the book with people. It's really been a labor of love. So thank you so much for honoring my work. I appreciate it.
Well, the labor has paid off, my friend. And so we are going to dive deep into this book. But before we do, I always like to give my guest the first chance to tell us about their project. So, what would you like us to know about the Queen's Path?
So for me, the Queen's Path started almost as an accident. Like I didn't expect to discover the Queen's Path. I went in to get a master's degree and be done with my entertainment world, executive world, and have a new chapter. And when I discovered the Queen's Path, I realized I was on it and totally changed my life. And I couldn't be more grateful to be the person who had the privilege of discovering it. So yeah, really exciting.
Well, a friend of mine told me about this. And as soon as she said something, Jessica Ure, shout out to Jessica, I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm on this path too.
Amazing. So how did you make that discovery when she said something to you?
We're going to talk about MIPE and MISOR in a moment, but there was something about that language. And when she started talking about the steps, that spoke to me. And I knew I had to learn more. And once I got to the curses and marks section, something we're also going to talk about, listeners, I was like, oh, I knew it. And then when I finally got to the final section, I was telling you, Stacey, before I hit the record button, there was a point I was listening to this book, as I also have a copy, and I was just crying because I'm like, oh, I have done the Queen's Path. I'm so excited about this and I can't believe it.
You got your sovereignty.
Yes.
Yes.
Also, if you're on YouTube, I'm going to show you this photo that I have had on my vision board for 2 years. So I've been working through a lot of different things over this time. And so this has been here, and this is me, the Queen.
I didn't realize it has been on your vision board for 2 years. You didn't say that part when you talked about the photograph before. So you've been on a sovereignty journey way before you read the book.
Oh, yeah, way before I read the book. Really, what I found is that I've been on the journey for a long time. Reading this book is helping me write the journey.
Oh,
And that has been so satisfying because we're going to start with a quick vocabulary lesson for everyone to make sure we're all on the same page. But there are great things about the hero's journey in the sense that there are a lot of stories that follow it. And so, if you are trying to learn how to write a book, this is a great way to learn the model, right? It's one way to write a book. And if you figure that out, then you can learn other formulas. But there's been something that's been missing, something that hasn't quite sat right. And your book addresses that. So, before we get into all of the nuances, we're going to talk about a few vocabulary words. The first one is sovereignty. So, can you define sovereignty for us?
So sovereignty is the inherent value of any human being, but especially for women. It is the recognition that you have value and you can make choices for yourself regardless of your circumstances, and that you honor the full embodied human that you are. You don't sell that, or you don't exchange it for something, for safety or for awareness or for inclusion, that the sovereignty is inherent to you regardless of the circumstances that you live in. And for me, the thing that really is important to understand about sovereignty is not the same as freedom. Freedom can be granted, it can also be taken away. You can have sovereignty and have no freedom. You can have sovereignty and have full freedom. You can have sovereignty and be negotiating your freedom all the time. Sovereignty is the foundation of where we get to live in our embodied soul as women. And to me, that sovereignty it's non-negotiable. It's saying I am inviolable in my identity. You cannot separate me from myself. And when a woman starts to really feel that in her breath and in her bones, she's transformed. She absolutely is transformed.
Absolutely. And I also feel like there's this aspect of integration.
Yes.
Integration is a huge piece of it.
Yes. And it comes from, so getting into the idea of the vocabulary lesson, right? The integration is because when women are growing up as little girls around the age of 7 or 8, we get divided. We get separated from ourselves into either the track of being a good girl or being the outside girl. And the good girl, I call the MISOR, the maiden in search of relationship. And that's just an anagram for maiden in search of relationship, MISOR. Or the outside girl, magical, isolated, powerful, and endangered, the MIPE. And that experience of being divided as children, to being put on a track that says you will do this or you will do that, and not really having much of a choice about it. Anybody that was the weird girl at school, or the girl with, like me, I had a mohawk and blue hair, like, you're the automatic MIPE. And so when you're placed on that track, most of us think the tracks are different, but the tracks are actually the same. The woman is going through the same steps. She's just doing it from she's either walking backwards or walking forwards. And whichever way she's going, those are the consequences for being on that track. But the fact that there are two tracks in and of itself is just a trap to keep women from their sovereignty. So the integration that you're talking about that comes at the end of the journey of sovereignty, at the end of the Queen's Path, is for the woman to pick and choose, like, which of the parts of myself that I have had to cut away or to distance myself from are actually important and integral to who I am as a human being. And what do I need to reclaim? And what do I need to basically say, kick rocks, because you're not part of my identity. I've taken you on because culture says, or family says, or job says. Actually, that's not me. So that's the integration process. It's part of sovereignty. And it's not integration in the form of healing. Like, one of the things that my practice partner and I, we did this workshop and we created a workbook for it. And she did the first pass at the workbook because I've been so busy with promoting the book. And there were all these places where she wrote healing, healing, healing the divide, healing the divide. And I'm like, we're not healing the divide. We're not broken and we're not wounded. We are divided by culture. And the minute we take responsibility for a wound, to heal a wound, we're playing into the patriarchy. We're playing into the thing that separates us and divides us. So it's really important to me to be a steward of language in this way, where we say, no, this is not yes, do I have wounds as a person, as a woman? Yes. Is this the wound? This is not the wound. And it is a construct that is given to us as women. And it's important to notice that, when you're talking about taking your own journey on the Queen's Path versus writing a story on the Queen's Path, the story is going to feel a lot more clear. Like, there's very discrete parts of the journey. A real live woman who's also on the Queen's Path is going to have a lot more nuance in that
Yes.
sense.
Yeah. And so honoring that nuance is so important, and recognizing that the divide is an illusion that has been
Yes.
applied to us. And I also want to say, as a heavy metal loving Buddhist in upstate New York when I was a kid, total MIPE, right?
Yes.
Right there. Like,
Yes.
I didn't have to do anything else. It's like, oh, you're a MIPE. Yeah. So we get into this illusion of the divide. We see ourselves on a team and often discarding this other part. And we're going to talk a little more about that in a moment. But to continue the vocabulary lesson, okay, so we've talked about sovereignty, so important for us to understand. But some people are newer to writing or they've never heard of like the hero's journey or the heroine's journey. And even if they have, a refresher is good because we're going to be talking about something else. It's not the antithesis. And so here are my very shortcut ways of talking about hero and heroine's journey. And then you share yours. Hero's journey is going out to slay the dragon. Heroine's journey is, going into the underworld to reclaim something. The steps are generally the same. The language is slightly different. So how do you define it? And then how does that lead to what you're doing, which is different?
So I take the Campbell's original definition of the hero's journey, which is very simple. It's like two sentences. He's like, boy hears a call to adventure, boy finds a teacher, boy goes on a quest, and in the quest achieves the elixir of life or the boon, returns to his people to share it. That to me is the hero's journey. And the heroine's journey has been defined by a couple of, writers, Victoria Schmidt, Gail Carriger, Maureen Murdoch, and they basically kind of have the same structure. The closest to mine is probably Carriger's because she talks about creating a community at the end, like that's the end of the heroine's journey. But the first person to do it was Maureen Murdoch, and she was a student of Campbell, and she went to him and she was like, "Hey, I think there's a story here for women." He's like, "No, the story for women is women are the center the hero is trying to get to." So she was like, "So I'm just a passive object waiting to be discovered?" And he's basically like, "Yeah." And she's like, "That's not good enough." So she wrote her own. She's a psychoanalyst, so hers is very psychoanalytic, and it was written in the 80s, so it's very steeped kind of in the goddess language of finding that feminine divinity and healing wounds, which, for me is like, no, we're not healing wound. And when you read Murdoch now, she's kind of dated, but it's been a really important piece of work because it was the first one to introduce. What I'm saying in my discovery is that I didn't create the Queen's Path. The Queen's Path is archetypal. It's in everything. It's in the Bible. It's in ancient mythology. It's all the way back to ancient Sumer, 6,000 years, the first poem ever written. You find it. It's in our movies. It's in our television, it's in novels. It's everywhere. And all I did was discover something that already existed. And what's different is if you look at women's stories, we are always put on this track to be divided. And once we are divided, we go through the same steps. The MISOR and the MIPE are having the same experience just from a different lens. That story is the story of being divided from ourselves in culture in order to make ourselves safe. And for most women, for most story across the millennia about women, women's stories have ended before sovereignty. So fairy tales that
Yes.
end in happily ever after, that is a third quadrant ending. And the woman never gets to her sovereignty. She is usurped. Her power is absorbed by a man and a family. That's not sovereignty. That's almost the middle. Like that's getting you to the end of the story. You're giving up your power before you get there. And, there are older stories that show, like the story of Lilith. The story of Adam and Eve is actually the story of Lilith and Eve. It's not Adam and Eve. Lilith wanted her autonomy. She was created at the same time as Adam, as his equal and peer. And when she would not submit to him, he got mad. And she said, "You know what? If I have to submit to you, this is not paradise." So she left. God saw that it was bad for the man to be alone. If you can't see me, I'm making big giant air quotes with my fingers. And, so he made Eve out of a part of his body so that she would always be submissive to him. And it's like, this is the story. You're always telling a story of a woman who is submissive and a woman who refuses to submit. And that's the Queen's Path. Both those women are on the same journey. They both want the same things. They want some sort of protection and autonomy. And real women are doing this dance all the time where they're constantly straddling the divide. Am I going on the journey to protection over here? Or am I going on the journey of my own power and autonomy over here? And when you're constantly doing that straddling work of trying to figure it out, you don't have energy to go and slay the dragon and do the quest. Because it's not that women can't be heroes. It's not that women can't do the tasks of a hero. A woman can slay the dragon. A woman can captain a starship. A woman can captain a pirate ship. A woman can steal the money or recapture the land. She can do all of it. It's not that a woman can't be a hero because she's not fit for the tasks. It's because when she comes back with a boon, nobody wants it from her. And every single one of us has had that experience where we bring our expertise and our knowledge and we are met with a Cassandra syndrome that says, "No, not from you." I tell the story of Atalanta, which is a Greek myth in my book, and it's the perfect example. Like, this goes back all the way to ancient Greece. A woman who was a better hunter, a better athlete than all the guys, and nobody would give her her due because she was a woman.
Yeah, and then there are all of the issues that women face along the way around, questioning their abilities. Are you going to have a sexual encounter that's going to lead to pregnancy? I mean, so many different things. Before we continue, I do want to show, especially if you're on YouTube, and you know what? If you're not on YouTube today, come see this on YouTube. It's going to help. This is when you're talking about quadrants and what the Queen's Path looks like. This is one of the great models that you have in your book, and then you break each one down and there are more details for each quadrant later in the book. But I wanted to show people what we're talking about, which I think is important because when we think about the hero's journey or the heroine's journey in terms of shape, it's like a straight line. It follows what would be called Freytag's model, which there's like escalating tension, we get to resolution, and we kind of come down, and this is something different. And so also what I want to say, because I know so many writers who say, I want to write an elliptical story. How do I write an elliptical story? Okay, if you want to write an elliptical story, here you go, my friends. This is a great model to help you think through your memoir in that way. So, yeah, the divide is an illusion. And yet, I would also say, kind of switching tracks for a moment, that it is real. And
Yes.
so, how do we end up in this situation of the divide if at one point, as you talk about in your book, we don't know it exists?
See, but that's one of the steps. One of the steps is being blind to the fact that this
Right.
exists at all. And it's interesting. I was in Scotland doing a workshop, and it was really interesting to have this whole group of women. There was one man in the group who was a writer, and they were mad at the steps, right? Like, we got to the blind step, and they were like, I don't want to be blind, right? And blind is the last step in the first quadrant. So it starts out once upon a time, then Kirsten Mark, which I know we'll talk about in a second, and then blind. And they're like, I don't want to be blind. How do I avoid being blind? It's like, you can't. It's archetypal. You are going to be blind to something on the path. And you're trying to do a hero's journey instead of doing the Queen's Path, which is, how do I avoid the thing, or how do I show or demonstrate that I avoided the thing? You can't do that. We are all blind to things in our lives. It's part of being a woman, because we don't want to believe that there is a system that is trying to divide us from ourselves. We want to believe in our wholehearted autonomy. It doesn't exist. We live in a culture that tells us what our roles are, and we are constantly either agreeing or fighting that. And so naturally, you're going to have a blind spot. So if you don't believe that this exists, that's fine. Then this is not the work for you. But I promise you, your story is going to be better, and your self-awareness as a writer is going to be better if you give yourself permission to let the archetypal unfold in front of you. And the idea behind archetypes, so if you don't know about archetypes, like, there's a different way of looking at archetypes from either a psychoanalytic perspective or from kind of a more pop culture. And in my perspective, I'm coming from a psychoanalytic stance. It says that archetypes are universal and eternal. They exist outside of us. They cannot be changed. We change their names. That's it. If you look at any culture, there's a warrior archetype, there's a mother archetype, there's a hero archetype, there's a goddess archetype, there's a goddess of love archetype. Every culture has these because the archetype exists in us as part of us. And the Queen's Path is archetypal. It exists in us as us. And so we're living it, and it's living us. It's a relationship 24/7, 365. Like, you cannot escape this. And that's not to be deterministic. It's to say it's a cultural pattern that exists around us that we produce.
As you were talking about that divide, I had this very specific moment. I mean, I think there could be many moments, but what was the moment when I went from being blind to I could do anything to all of a sudden, like, wait a second, there's a difference. And it was this moment when I wanted a camera. Okay. And now I'm going to like date myself. This is like 1980s, the little Kodak camera that, you just had like the little, I don't know, bit of film in it. And it was super cheap, but I just wanted one. I was like, I'm going to become a photographer one day. I want to have this. And my whole life, my mom had said, like, well, you can get such and such when you're this age. So, like, I could get a bike when I was 6. I could get this camera when I was 8. And I grew up in a neighborhood with all boys. I was the only girl. And, I could roll with all of them. And I did. And so I saw myself as equal to all of them in strength, in capacity, in intelligence, you name it. And so my brothers, who were 2 years younger, I have twin brothers, wanted to play with this camera. And I was like, "No effing way. I waited till I was 8, man. You're 6. You can't have this camera." And my mom was like, "Let them play with it." And she said to me in this kitchen, like, I have this, like, very vivid moment where she said, "Your brothers will always be able to do more things than you, and they will be able to do them earlier because they are boys. And that is just the
Lisa.
way it is." I know.
Oh my God. Yes, I have a very similar story. Same thing. If you're listening to us, we got on camera and we're both wearing purple shirts. And yeah, it's hilarious. This isn't in a book. When I was 6, I grew up in the 70s, like I'm 56, and I was the only girl in a neighborhood full of boys of my age. And so we played games running around like feral children in the 70s did, like Gen X, right? Like we were kind of feral. And one day, because this was not inappropriate at the time, we were playing cowboys and Indians, and I was on the Indians team, so all the boys took their shirts off and I took my shirt off, and the neighbor saw me and went and got my mom and was like, "You have to put your shirt on." And I'm like, "But then I won't be on the team." And then she's like, "But you're a girl." I'm like, "But then I won't be a brave with the boys." And she's like, "But you're a girl." I just refused. I just refused. And it wound up getting me going home with my mom. And she said, "Well, you can play by yourself then." And so I played for about 2 minutes in the backyard by myself and was bored to death, and then went into my room and read books. And that became my life. Like I became a reader because I was blind to the rules, right? About like what it meant that there was this distinction that I didn't agree with at all. And the consequences escaped me, but they were not subtle. They were very clearly delineated. Like, you will not do same kind of story. Like they will get
Yeah.
to do more because they're boys, and it's infuriating, and it should be. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we're blind to the impact that has on us as women, then we're doing ourselves a disservice.
Yes, and I think, when I look back at that moment, I'm pretty sure I got sent to my room for arguing because I was like, "No." And then in my head, even though my mom won the argument in the sense that I had to go to my room, I was like, "I am going to defy this at every turn. This is not going to be the way it is." And so there's a way that I set my life up, on a certain trajectory, as you talk about, but that trajectory was all about denying anything that
Yes.
was the opposite. And so I think this is a great way to talk about. So there's that period where you're blind, you wake up to it, and then we have our curses and we have our marks. And we do a lot with them in, the wrestling and the story. And if you want to know all of the nuances of this, you just got to buy the book. We can't do that in
Right.
the amount of time we have. But tell us about these curses and marks and how they impact our journeys, whether that's, the journey of life or the journey on the page.
So I want to start with the journey on the page because I think it's really important to show that the curses and marks, they're in our stories all the time, right?
Yes.
Like think about Frozen, right? The two characters. So Anna gets the streak of white hair. That's her mark of her curse of being struck with magic by her sister. Her sister has the magic power. She wears gloves all the time. That's her curse is her magic. Her mark is her gloves. So there's always something in a story. And I guarantee you can look at any story and you will see it. It's right in front of you, right? Agatha all along, she's got this weird witch power where she can steal other people's power. That's her curse. She's lost a child. That's her curse, right? Like, and we all have multiple curses, by the way. So it's not just one. But in a story, you're always going to see that. So bear that in mind. The problem is that we often think that the curse, that it's for us or that it's personal, when in fact it's archetypal, right? The curse, I'm just going to use Frozen because it's easy and most people know it, but like Elsa's curse of magic and power is not her problem. It's everybody else's problem because they're afraid of it. And
Yes.
she takes it on personally and so moves into isolation. And it is the isolation that is the mark of her curse. And it's same in Wicked, right? Like it's her power that is a problem for everybody else. And as real life women, like we have this too. We know this very well. I was talking to a client this morning about this very thing. Like, I mean, in her case, like, yes, you are smarter than those people. Like, so what? I mean, you don't have to dumb yourself down for coworkers. Like why is that a thing? That doesn't mean be unkind, but you don't have to dumb yourself down for anybody. So, whether you were writing a story or you're trying to identify in your own life about what are my curses and marks, you may have 10 that you can use, right? If you're trying to tell an elegant story, pick one or two. If you're looking at your own life, look for the through lines and where the curses are related to events in your
Yes.
life. It will be its own unique journey through the Queen's Path that's associated with that particular curse and mark.
Yeah, and what that means is that you could have multiple memoirs, right? So if you
Yes,
wanna know how
exactly.
can I be a serial memoirist, you can go through this path with many different curses and marks. And so, yeah, we have these experiences and they are affecting us all of the time. And I'm thinking about every time I engage with this material, I'm like, my head's like, "Brrr, all of this information and how does it relate to my own story and which ones am I gonna work with, all that. But I want to get back to we have the curses and the marks, and that is what we're really confronting and addressing. And you said something, and I may get it wrong in terms of where it shows up in the book. So if I do, feel free to correct me. But you said this path is dangerous.
Yes, the
And
path is dangerous.
yeah, talk about that for a moment.
So the path is in four quadrants. The first and the fourth quadrant make up the top hemisphere, if you will. So there's an x axis, the top hemisphere, like from, if you're looking at a clock, it would be like from 9 to 12 and 12 to 3. Like that's the fourth and the first quadrant. And then below the x axis is kind of the underworld, is probably the closest that I can give it, right? Exactly that. So most people want to skip the second and third quadrants. They want to go from their first quadrant to the fourth quadrant. They want to go from undifferentiated and innocent to all knowing and understanding and not having any kind of pain. But you
Yes.
can't get to sovereignty without pain and understanding. And to do that, you have to go through the danger. At first, in the second quadrant, it starts with a little bit of danger, and then you get cleaved, you get separated into either MIPE or MISOR, and then you have to confront what that means. And then you get hunted nearly to death, right? And that's either you're hunting something that almost kills you or you're being hunted and they almost kill you. And you can see this in movies like Promising Young Woman. That story ends in the third quadrant. She dies before she gets to sovereignty. Happily Ever After is the danger of giving up your life to somebody else's identity and becoming a wife and a mother and not having a last name anymore and not having an individual identity. That story's over in the third quadrant too. Happily Ever After and Death by Annihilation are the same ending, just different faces. Misor or Mipe, they both end there if you don't move forward to sovereignty. So it's dangerous because in real women's lives and in women's stories, the story really can end before she gets to sovereignty.
Yes.
I was having a conversation with a screenwriting professor at USC, and she was saying, she's like, what I love about this is that the hero's journey always, if he doesn't succeed, we don't even think about it. Like he's going to succeed. Like you're reading the story to get to the success of returning with the boon or returning with the elixir. That's the hero's journey. We know it. There's not a lot of danger. It's predictable. A woman's story, a Queen's Path story, this story can really end in tragedy. And it happens all the time. We live it all the time. We live with the risk of it all the time. Do I find myself pregnant? And now what do I do? Do I give up the baby to adoption? Do I have an abortion? Do I get married to this man I maybe just met? Maybe I can love him. Maybe I can't love him. I don't know the answer, right? All three or four are real endings for women.
Yes.
And we don't know the outcome. Sometimes we'll get to sovereignty in those endings and sometimes we won't. And we know the risk. We know it in our bodies when we're faced with those options. This could end me.
Yeah, there is real danger. And what I would say is that the danger, especially, if you're a memoirist and you're writing about your own life, it's not a matter of, oh my gosh, if I start going on this journey of writing my book in this way, I'm going to face all these dangers. No, the dangers have always been there. Now you're becoming aware of them. And so I'm going to give two really concrete examples. When I was a child, and there wasn't a danger that I faced, but it felt like the danger of annihilation to me when it was taught to me. And it was a very benign thing. My grandmother was trying to teach me how to address envelopes. And she said, when you get married, your name will be your husband's name. So, it was in her case, Mrs. Howard Biggs, right? So her name was erased. And I remember thinking, like, oh my goodness, this is what really happens. Like, it was shocking to me. When I look at her life, I see how that happened to her. And she lived that out. In my own life, I got Lyme disease. And part of that journey was working myself to death, right? Trying to prove myself in a way that wasn't working. So, listeners, if you are on this path, yeah, you might find the danger. Yeah, you might have to confront some of these things, but there's freedom on the other side if you do.
Yes, yes. Well, and as a writer, and especially as a memoirist, the more real you can be, the more your story is going to connect with your readers. Like, that's true regardless. Like, I think somebody asked me recently, like, you write this in such a way that's kind of a hybrid memoir, hybrid telling stories about your life, about your patients' lives, about, and then bringing in movies and television and novels. And like, yeah, there was no other way to tell this story and have it be honest.
Yes.
I couldn't have done it with just my patients or just movies or just me. Like, it would not have connected people, I don't think. Like, I don't think it would have felt honest to read it and just be like, it's just been another movie theory book or writing theory book. And I think women really gravitate towards it because I agreed to be frightened in writing it. Like, I agreed to look at the things that would scare me if somebody knew them. Like, well, what's going to change if somebody knows this about me? I had to do it. I had to go to the fear.
And I think that for me as a reader, it didn't just make the experience more real. Like it wasn't just a theory of how stories work or, a theory of screenplays or something like that. It wasn't a theory. It was real because it was something you had lived. It was other people had lived that. We have characters. And so because I could feel the realness in it, when I got to the places where I felt a little crunchy, I didn't wanna look at this stuff when I'm reading this book. I was like, "You know what? She's gone on this path. I can do this." And that allowed my resistance to melt away. And one of the things I love about this book is that it's not just a book with all of this information. You have tons of great exercises all throughout the book to have the reader pause and say, "Okay, I've shared this theory with you. I've shared this information. How does it relate to your life right now?" So that you can go on the journey as you're actually reading the book, which is different from other craft books that I've read. And I read a lot of craft books. I mean, that's just part of my job. And so I love that about this. And I'm wondering if we can give listeners just a taste of an exercise or something they can think about right now while they're listening to this that might give them a sense of the type of work they would do on the Queen's Path and, just give them one more reason to buy your book.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. Well, before I give an example of an exercise, I'm going to tell you what I tell people in workshops, which is even if you're a writer doing this for your writing, when you're in the workshop, what I usually ask everyone to do is like, put your own life in this first. Use yourself as the model first. Because even though you may not ever share this information that's in your notebook or workbook or whatever, it's going to help you embody it and understand it in a way that is going to help you reproduce it in your writing. And so it's really important, I think, because women, my experience so far, I've been so fortunate to have women just like confirm, yes, 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 every time I meet with women about the book. So that being said, one of the first exercises is to identify whether or not you're a MIPE or a MISOR. And we go through and we ask questions. There are questions that are asked in the book like, did you like playing with dolls and being girly when you were a little kid? Did you resist anything girly when you were a little kid? Do you feel like it's your job to be receptive to men and jobs and kids and husband and family, or do you run screaming away from that kind of stuff, right? Like, and that helps you kind of figure out, like, am I more MIPE or more MISOR? So that's just one example of an exercise, right? But to be fair, like no real woman is all one or the other.
Right.
You're always going to be a blend because you're a real person, right? A character can be separate and be more discreetly one or the other, but a real person is going to be somewhere in the middle. And she's always kind of having to do the work of like figuring out, am I, today with my kid's teacher, am I going to be more this? Or when I go to work with my law firm, am I going to be more that? Like, it's always a balance for a real person. Character is different. Probably my favorite exercise, and it's the one most people actually hate, is one of the exercises in the commit stage, which is in the second quadrant, because the commitment is almost always a commitment to either the scar and the mark or the track. And there's a moment either in a story or in a real woman's life where you go, okay, I'm failing. I'm going to double down.
Yes.
And what you double down on is the scar or the curse. And until you're like on the other side of it, you don't see it. You're like, okay, I'm going to be, and so the exercise is to, where have you done this? Like for me, I was working this high profile, high pressure, very well paid, very high powered job in a university. And when things started to really go wrong, I just worked more. I worked harder. I got up earlier. I made more calls. I tried to make more deals. I was like, I'm going to be even better than I was before. It's like, that's the problem. You don't fit. And you're trying to be better at the thing that you think they're going to reward you for. And they're never going to reward you for this because they want you to be the helper. They don't want you to be the leader. It broke me. It absolutely broke me. But that's the commit step. And so figuring out how to be in that place and really look at it and say, where have I doubled down on the things that all they did was cut me more into pieces? It's one of the hardest steps.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I can't say that I love that, right? That
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
be disingenuous, but I love that kind of exercise. And what I would say, listeners, is that if you're thinking, well, I can't tell where I doubled down, go to the place where you were broken and then look backwards, because sometimes it's a matter of, walking backwards to find that step. But yeah, the more I saw that in my own life, the more I understood how all of this was working through me, whether I wanted it to or not, and how just unconscious it is, because we are navigating a world of patriarchy that has a lot of different requirements on us. And so, what do you have to do to be successful in each individual situation in real life is dependent on what is being asked of you and what is going to help you get your way or have some modicum of power in a
Right.
situation where you may be powerless.
Yes, 100%. And recognizing that not having power is often not your fault.
Yes.
It's often structural. That's an important recognition that if you are up against structural power, you have to find your sovereignty through whatever circuitous route that you have to use to find it. And it might mean that you play girl games. It may mean that you eschew the girl games and say, screw this, I'm not doing it. Whatever it is, so that you maintain your individual sovereignty, that inherent worth and awareness of your authority and agency, that's the right answer. And that might mean keeping your job and paying the bills. It might also
Yes.
mean telling everybody to F off and like working at Denny's. Like, who knows? But yeah, it's finding that way that's authentic to you.
Yeah, and just owning that there are a lot of different options. And this was something that I found to be really helpful around the divide. So we're kind of circling back that relates to some of these other things and how it's not our fault, but yet we can believe it's our fault. So here's some of the things. This is on page 97. If I had been stronger, I would not have been abused. If I had stood up for myself, they wouldn't have treated me this way. If I just can find the time to work harder, I'll be able to catch up and show them my value. And then, of course, there are others. But, these are things that are imposed upon us that we accept. And then we start telling ourselves these stories that take away our power.
That's right. It's really understanding the difference between personal and structural impediments.
Yes.
You can do a lot with personal impediments. You can do almost nothing about structural impediments unless you are working with other women, which is why at the end of the sovereignty journey, part of it is to find your tribe. Gather your tribe and have other women that you support and that are supporting you. Because when women work together, instead of being divided against each other, which is what we're trained to do in patriarchy, when we're doing that, when we're together, we're hard to stop. And, there are great stories of Lysistrata from Aeschylus, I think it's Aeschylus, but, about the women of Sparta who were like, why are we doing this? Why are we letting the guys go to war and then come home and like have a good time and then go back to war? Like, no more sex. Just, we're not going to do sex anymore. And then the guys are like losing their shit. Like, and that when women band together and they come up with the solutions together, we usually win. So yeah, sisterhood is real.
And it's so important. And so, listeners, right now, here's an exercise I'd like you to do. Write down who's in your tribe. And then I want you to think about who else do you want to be in your tribe, and think about how you can go out and connect with those people. Because when we do this work together, we are so powerful. And imagine the world we could all create if we all had our sovereignty.
And if we guaranteed it for each other.
Yes, absolutely. Because sovereignty isn't a male female thing, it's for
Mm-mm.
everyone.
It's for everyone. I have more than two male clients, but I have two male clients who read the book mostly as a kindness to me. I think they're both, avid readers, and they thought they'd give me their male opinion, and one of them's a screenwriter. And they both came to me around the same time after the book came out, and they're like, I think I'm a male MIPE. And I was like, oh, that's very interesting. Tell me more. So I've had to rethink this as well, because I didn't talk about this in the book, but I talk a lot about it in workshops. Before the book was written, I was still workshopping and teaching and trying to make sure I was getting it right. I did a screenwriting workshop, and I walk into this room and it's all men. And I was like, am I in the right room? Like, is this my class? And the guys are like, no, Queen's Path, right? Female characters. I'm like, yeah, okay, all right. And these guys, like, they were asked really good questions. And they said, one of them in particular, was like, I think the Queen's Path is for everyone. And I was like, I haven't tested it on male characters, so I don't know. And he said, well, what about Superman? What about Batman? What about Harry Potter? And I was like, oh my God, you're right. Those characters in particular are definitely on a Queen's Path. They're not on a hero's journey at all. None of those three. And I was really taken aback. I have not had time to go do a male version looking at movies or novels or anything, but there's something there. And to your point, sovereignty is for everyone. It is not just for women. It's for everyone. And sovereignty is taken from everybody as well. Like, especially if
Yes.
you have any degree of marginalization, it's taken from you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I will be excited if there is a part 2 of this
Oh,
book, right? I don't know what the King's Path, I don't know. I don't know about that.
yeah, exactly. It was funny. My practice partner and I were talking about this the other day, because we just did a workshop, Psychedelics and Queen's Path together. And all of the women who were there wanted to do a couples version with their partners. We were knocking around this idea, like, you need a King's Path, right? Like, or do we call it the sovereign man, or do we talk about the sovereign couple? And
Yeah.
like, how do we do that? Right. So we're knocking that idea around right now. I have talked to my agent about a version that might be couples first, or maybe about a man's version. I'm not sure yet what it will look like. My practice partner, Jenny, she likes the idea of the knight's path, which I think is kind of nice.
I like that.
So we're just knocking around the idea. But yeah, more to come for sure. And I don't have any other workshops planned for this year, 2025. But before Christmas, I'll have some workshops on my website for what's coming in 2026. If you have an event, like if you run a writer's workshop or something and you want me to come speak, I'm more than happy to come and like do workshops for people. I'm not expensive. I love this work so much. I really love working, especially working with writers, about like how to free their story so they don't feel confined in just the tropes that we've been trained as,
Yes.
especially as writing has been dominated so long by the hero's journey and all of that. Like, women get kind of stuck sometimes and they feel like, well, I'm trying to make it fit and it doesn't fit. So yeah, I feel like if you do the Queen's Path work, you wind up freeing your story, and it's pretty amazing. So yeah.
So we have the Queen's Path out now. We could potentially one day have the Knight's Path or the Sovereign Couple. I love both of those ideas, by the way. And you also have another book out, which
Yes.
is enhancing this conversation around the Queen's Path, and that is Mushroom Pharmacy, A Practical Guide to Psychedelic Mushrooms. So tell us about that book and how does it enhance this conversation?
So I'm a certified psychedelic therapist. So I work with different kinds of plant medicines and work with mostly ketamine in California because that's what's legal. But my agent had brought this up to me. He's like, I really do think there's a market for a psychedelic book. And psychedelics are actually a great tool on the path to sovereignty. They kind of can help, whether we're talking about even just something simple like a cacao ceremony that's heart
Yes.
opening and totally legal. Like, that can help open up this idea, like, where's the compassion I need for myself so that I can see the steps on the path and the places where I need to find kindness for myself.
Yes.
That at one level versus going all out ayahuasca or something and like, help me on my journey. I need to get through this abjection step. And I don't think I can do it without help. Right.
Yes.
So psychedelics really do help make that better. I also am doing something that's no drugs at all. It's called auto-induced cognitive trance. And I'm going to be the first person trained in it in the United States. It's a modality that's only available in French speaking countries right now. So I speak French. I've been doing that training for the last 3 years. And in the next month, I'll be certified in it. And I can offer that to people as well. But having a route to the unconscious is part of what psychedelics and any like non-ordinary state of consciousness is helping someone do. And as artists, that's what we do.
Yes.
We access the unconscious all the time in order to create worlds and create stories for people, and even to tell our own stories. How many times have you, either seen in an interview or you've been interviewed, and somebody says, oh, well, was this a conscious choice about this symbol or this, this part of your story? And it's like, no, not at all. But if you look at it at the level of continuity and how those symbols in the story work, they're perfect because the unconscious has been invited into the storytelling.
Yes. And I often tell people the unconscious is way smarter than this prefrontal cortex area where we have the thinking brain. There's so much more we can access for our creativity and our wisdom in general. And so I'm going to put you on the spot, Stacey. Feel free to say no, because I always tell people no, no is a complete sentence. I would love to have you back on to deepen that conversation, because I think there's so much more that we could talk about that's related to writers and related to this path of sovereignty. And there's only so much time in the day. So if you would
Indeed.
be so kind, I would love to.
Oh, Lisa, I would be delighted to come back. I love talking to you. I love your work, and I'm so grateful that you're doing it. So absolutely, I would come back anytime. You just say the
Awesome.
word and I'll be here.
Yay. So I will be in touch about that. We'll talk about that after I hit the record button and we stop this. But for now, if people want to know more about you, they want to learn about these workshops that you're going to have in 2026, they want to buy a copy of The Queen's Path, what are the best ways to connect with you and buy the book?
So the book is available everywhere. You can get it on Target, you can get it on Barnes & Noble, you can get it at Bookshop, you can get it on Amazon. You can get it anywhere that you buy books. You can get a Spanish copy from Libre Serio in Spain. You can get a copy from me. You can come to a workshop. I have a bunch of videos that help break down the book on my website if you need some support. I have a bunch of freebies. Like you can get, like in the book, they're all given in quadrants, but I have a full map where you can just have the map on one sheet of paper if you're writing, and it's just useful to have on your desk. My website is Stacey Simmons, PhD, and my name is spelled STACEY. SIMMONS, PhD.com. Everything that you can find is on there. The book is available from Penguin Random House, so you can go on Penguin Random House's website, or you can go to Hay House, which is the imprint that did it. And yeah, it's available everywhere. So yeah, go find me. On socials, I'm Stacey Simmons, PhD, both on TikTok and Instagram. And I'm also on TikTok as the Witch Mom because I do witchy stuff. So I have some witchy stuff there. So that's Witch Daily on TikTok, and Stacey and Psychology Queen on TikTok, but it's Stacey Simmons, PhD there as well. And same on LinkedIn.
And all of the links will be in the show notes. And yeah, we're going to have a witchy conversation as well, because I'm a certified Akashic Records reader, and I'm becoming an Akashic Records healer.
We
That
have
will
so much
be,
to talk about.
yeah.
Yeah.
So lots and lots to talk about, to be continued. But for now, thank you so much for being
Thank
here
you.
for my 100th episode. It has been an
So
absolute
honored.
delight.
Thank you so much. I really am grateful to you and to your listeners for giving my book a little bit of love. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to learn more about Stacey, and most importantly, buy a copy of The Queen's Path, please see the show notes for this episode. But before you go, I would love it if you would text the show if you're on Apple Podcast or Spotify, or leave a comment on YouTube letting me know how you will claim your sovereignty in 2026. I would love to hear your answers. And speaking of your thoughts on the podcast, your responses, and all of the comments you've shared on YouTube, I want to give a special shout out to everyone who has connected with me in 2025. Your thoughts, questions, and your praise of the podcast have been so meaningful, and I am so grateful to each and every one of you. And listeners, if you haven't reached out to the show, I would love to hear from you too, because your experience matters. And as you share it, we co-create this show. If you love this episode, here are 3 simple ways that you can keep this show thriving. 1, subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. 2, leave a 5-star review so others can find the show. 3, join my engaged dynamic community by signing up for the Writing Your Resilience newsletter. As a thank you, you'll receive a free copy of Ditch Your Inner Critic: 5 Tools to Transform Self-Doubt into Self-Support. Until next time, remember that your story matters. As you write and connect with the truest, most authentic version, you become not just the writer, but the person you're meant to be. And that, my friends, is the real freedom writing can offer.